Hi everyone, welcome to this session. I'm pleased to introduce Kaylin Linke. Kaylin Linke is the head of solutions architectures at Social Geist. With a background in market research, Kaylin has over 10 years experience focused on various aspects of social data. At Social Geist, she brings this expertise to guide customers as they integrate a variety of social data types into their everyday operations. She will be presenting a talk titled Data Acquisition Made Easy, Accessing Social Conversations at Scale. Please join me in welcoming Kaylin.
Got the mic. Thank you everyone, and welcome. I'm pleased to see all of you here. So yes, my name is Kaylin Linke. I'm the head of solutions architecture for Social Geist. And I'm here today to talk about one of the most fundamental parts of any data science project, if not the fundamental part, acquiring the data. Specifically in our case, we're focused on social media data and accessing all of those conversations. So I thought I would start with just a quick story and nod along if you can feel any of this pain. So in my last role, I was working with a social media listening application. And we had built sentiment per language, but we wanted to take it a step further and allow our customers to create their own custom sentiment models. So whatever sentiment, positive sentiment meant to them, they could label the data and we'd build a model for them. Now, as part of this, we were looking for any potential way of optimizing our models. We had already built active learners, we were doing stacked models, and what we decided to do in one brainstorming session was take apart our overall data source and see which are the individual data components that might have metadata that could be interesting to use in our model. One of those data sources was Amazon consumer reviews and other review sites like TripAdvisor. So if you think about a review data set, there's something really valuable there when you're trying to determine sentiment, the star rating. Someone saying, I give this product 5 out of 5. Someone saying, I would recommend this product. A lot of these sites also have pros and cons lists, so people saying like, exactly, here's what I liked and here's what I didn't like. This is the point in the brainstorming meeting where I realized that even though our data provider at the time was giving us these fields, they were giving us star ratings, they were giving us the recommendation, they were giving us the pros and cons, we were dropping it. It wasn't in our database because at the time of integration, it didn't fit into our larger schema. So you can imagine how frustrating it was when we'd been trying to optimize any way possible, and there was a virtual gold mine just sitting there going to waste. So I like to tell this story, not to start off on a downer note, but because I think it's a great illustration of why it's so important to understand all of the details of the data sets that you're using. And now in my current role, actually working for that data provider I mentioned, I get to help our customers do just that. Dive into the details of all of our data sets and understand how the different fields could be utilized, how different social data sources fit together, how they fit with other types of data they might have in-house. So for today, I'm going to highlight one of our specific partners, Reddit. We have an exclusive partnership where anyone who is wanting to use Reddit data in their application, they come to us, and we've built some tools around that to make the access easier. All right, let's go ahead and jump in to what one of your first questions might be, which is, who exactly is Social Geist? So we've been around for quite a while, since 2000, and like many good tech companies, started in a dorm room. And you can think of us as the connector. So we're between the social networks, the platforms, and the people who want to use the data. We have a pipeline that makes that process run smoothly. In terms of what we actually do, I want you to think about any kind of utilitarian task around capturing, and feeding data. So things like setting up crawlers, creating APIs, reading through API documentation, data access agreements, all of those details around actually getting your hands on data sets like social media data, that's our sweet spot. That's where we live. Okay, so I mentioned the Reddit partnership. Quick show of hands, how many of you are familiar with Reddit or Reddit users? Woohoo! That's awesome. So that's definitely going to make this a little bit more interesting for you. But there are a few highlights of Reddit and the structure of the platform itself that I want to go over just to kind of set the stage. First is just scale. So Reddit is the third largest site in the US right now. There are 20 million monthly messages being posted on Reddit. And what's interesting is it's not just conversation that's staying on Reddit. What we see is that the conversation may start there, new trends, emerging ideas, but then Reddit has the power of driving that to other places across the web, places like Amazon, Twitter, BuzzFeed. Now, in terms of actually talking about the structure of Reddit, since all of you are Reddit users, you're probably familiar, but let me just run down some details. So think of Reddit as a place that is built of many different communities. So each of these communities is called a subreddit. And the thing to understand about these subreddits is they're self-organizing. So it's someone saying, I have an interest in this specific topic, so I'm going to start a subreddit so I can have more conversations about it. And they really range from being super broad to very specific. There is definitely something out there for everyone in terms of the communities. For example, aside from data, I love gardening. So as a Reddit user, I spend a lot of time on the gardening subreddit. This is just for general conversations, people asking questions, sharing tips, sharing pictures of their beautiful plants. But I also follow some really specific subreddits within gardening. There's one for hot peppers. There's one called Savage Garden, which is actually just all about carnivorous plants. And there's even one called prop lifting, which is a new one I just found out about that we're going to talk a little bit more about later. So in terms of the Social Gist and Reddit partnership, why does this make sense? So for us, it was really a no-brainer. As the sort of provider of social media, like Reddit was an important source for us. We've started to see, especially over the past couple of years, people getting really interested, our customers asking us how to get Reddit data and wanting to be able to gather insights from this community. And for Reddit, for them, it's really all about how do they make this Reddit data publicly available in commercial applications, while at the same time maintaining their strict level of compliance. So for them, what we really bring to the table is our expertise, not just in building APIs, but also in understanding the process around compliance. For Reddit, there's a strict use case approval process that we have in place where Reddit actually knows all of the places where the Reddit data ends up and how it's being used. Okay, so talking the specifics around the data delivery options. So like I mentioned, we have built the process for use case vetting. We also have built enterprise-ready APIs. And there's 3 different data delivery options. So we have a full feed. To access the full feed, you're just connecting to an HTTP stream. And this contains every post and comment that's happening on Reddit. So in terms of who's using this, it's typically going to be the large analytics players, large social media listening companies, anyone who has a need for, the very broad coverage of Reddit. There's not a particular topic that they're trying to pull from. They want everything, and they've got it with the full feed. Now, for those who might have something a little bit more specific in mind for their use case, maybe there is a set of keywords that they want to track on Reddit, a set of brands, a set of subreddits. We also offer the same connection, so it's a HTTP stream, but instead of getting everything, you just get what matches your rules. So you're able to create those rules up front, say, I want everything that matches these 5 brands, and then we'll put that into a stream for you. We are also indexing the Reddit data. So that full feed, the all public posts and comments, we're pulling that into our own infrastructure, into our own index, and you're able to access it through a REST API. So same sort of situation where if there's just a set of keywords that you're interested in, a set of brands, you can get that data through the REST API. It's also used for any sort of historical research, and oftentimes it's where people get started. So if you're new to analyzing Reddit, you don't really know what the data looks like, the REST API is a great place for that. And then we have some production use cases that are very specific in nature, where it's just easier for them to use the REST API. Now, in addition to these 3, which are focused on the posts and comments, all delivered with a latency of under 10 seconds, we also have a feed for compliance. Like I mentioned, that's a big part of our partnership with Reddit. So we have a feed of compliance activities, like if a user on Reddit deletes a post. They decided they didn't want that information out there on Reddit anymore. We have that event, that deletion, in our compliance stream, so anyone who is an end user of the data can also delete the post. In addition to compliance, we have something called votes. So the vote score, this is another aspect of Reddit that you're probably familiar with, where you're able to upvote or downvote any post or comment on Reddit. And so in the votes feed, you're able to get all of the vote information surrounding the posts and comments that you're pulling in. So it's not just that we build these APIs, we also have some tools around them to make them easier to use and easier to track your activity. So what we're looking at here, this is just a screen grab from our main dashboard. So you're able to track the connections, get a record of any disconnects that you might have on the stream, as well as seeing the actual subscriptions. The dashboard for the filtered feed is going to look very similar. It has all of the same areas except for one additional. It has a section for your rules. So like I mentioned, with the filtered feed, what you're doing to get set up and running is actually creating your rules. So determining this is the set of terms that I'd like to search for. And you can do that either directly through this user interface, you can see right here in the box, or we also have an API. So you can do it programmatically as well. And here we have a couple examples. So we have one looking for any mention of Home Depot, and one looking for any mention of trailer, just from some testing that I was doing. Now those are both very basic, very simple, but we use Manticore Search for both the filtered feed as well as the REST API, which is very similar to Sphinx, if any of you are familiar. And with that comes several operators. So you can do ands, ors, nots, as well as near terms. For the REST API, we have 2 endpoints, the Reddit search and the Reddit link search. So for the Reddit search, that's what you would use if you want to search for a specific term. You can also pull in all the posts or comments from a particular subreddit or a particular author. For the Reddit link search, we're actually doing a little bit of additional work behind the scenes to make that one possible. So when the Reddit data is coming into our index, there is a field for URL. So if as a user of Reddit, I am posting a message that has a URL attached to it, it will come through in that feed. And then we take it a step further. So we are also parsing the title and the text body for any additional URLs. So this is an interesting one for anyone who's trying to track the spread of like a particular news article or articles from a particular domain, if they want to see how that is spreading across Reddit. That's what you would put in as your search term. And then the results come back, tell you, here's how many times this link was shared, and here's the subreddits where it was shared. Okay, so let's actually look at some examples of what this Reddit data looks like. And if you have not seen the trailer for the new Cats movie based on the musical, you might be a little confused and or scared. Even if you've seen the trailer, you might be a little confused or scared. For those of you who don't know, there is a new movie coming out based on the musical. The trailer was released a little while ago, and it has garnered a pretty strong reaction. And we're going to go into some of the details of that reaction and what people thought about it. Okay, so what I did to be able to share this example is I actually did a search within that REST API index, and I looked for any mention of the word cats near the word trailer so that I could find what is it that people are saying. Now, I was expecting largely negative conversations, but to stay on the positive side, for this particular example, I did pull out someone who is feeling pretty positive about it. In their words, I feel a lot of people misunderstand how the movie is supposed to be portrayed. So what you see on the screen here, this is exactly what it looks like on the Reddit platform. I just grabbed this screenshot. And you can see all of the different details that's included along with the message itself. If we go behind the scenes of what we can pull out from this message, the metadata that could then be used for your analysis, let's look at that. So the first thing is that we know the language. So that's another additional piece of work that we're doing on our side, is tagging each post and comment with the language. We also have the thing type. So this is a Reddit-specific vernacular where the thing type link means a post. So you have posts and comments. In this case, we're looking at a post. As well as the ID and the name. So the name field is what we typically use as the unique identifier to say this is the post that we're talking about. We also have the original link back to Reddit. So if you want to see it natively in the platform, you can do that as well. Now if we break it down even further, the first thing that I want to highlight is the subreddit information. So like I mentioned, the Reddit platform is organized into these different communities called subreddits. And this is really valuable information in a few different ways. So one, if we think about one of the big challenges of working with social media data, any type of social media data, it can be very noisy. It can be hard to find the particular conversation that you care about. Brands have ambiguous names, multiple meanings. So the subreddit info is one piece of the whole picture that can help you determine, is this a mention, is this a post or comment that's actually relevant to what I'm looking for? It also means that if you're trying to do more category type analysis, If you want to use this data set to help with a machine learning model that you're building, using it as training data, there's this level of categorization already built in. You'll also see the interests tags. So this is something that Reddit does, where they actually go through each of the individual subreddits and they assign these interest categories. So again, it's just another level that tells you a little bit more about this particular post and allows you to narrow in on what matters to you. So in this case, not surprisingly, the subreddit movies is tagged with general entertainment as well as movies. I don't have it on the screen here, but we also have the number of subscribers to that particular subreddit. So you also have an idea of how many people potentially saw this post, how engaged is this community. Now, of course, we also have a timestamp. So you can do any kind of time analysis that you'd like. And we know some things about the author. Their name, the author URL, as well as something called flair text, which there isn't any in this case, but think of it as just a little something extra that the author can say about themselves. So in this data set, when I was looking through, I saw quite a few that were related to movies, like movies buff or things like that. So just tells you a little bit more that this is a person who loves movies in that case. We sometimes see people who use something to designate where they're from. So you can pull out location data occasionally from it. It really just varies on a case-by-case basis. In terms of the text, so for those of you who are wanting to take social data and apply NLP and other types of machine learning to it, we do have the full text available. In this case, we're looking at the full title. And there is also this is another place where that link flair text comes into play. So in this example, they actually tagged it with discussion. So this is the author saying, hey, I'm proposing this, let's talk about it. Another common one I see is meme. So if someone's posting a meme, they'll often include that as the flair text. So as mentioned, we have the full body of the text, as well as the same information, but in HTML. And for that votes feed, this is the example payload specific to the feed. And you're able to see what the current score. So at the time that I grabbed this information, this post had a score of 52, and the previous score was 49. So you're able to see which way is it trending, how much are people engaging with this post. I have several customers who are doing some experimentation around predicting if things will go viral on Reddit, and this is an important metric for those types of projects. So like I mentioned, we have posts, which we were looking at in an original post, but then there's also going to be all of these rich comments that people are making on a post. So at the time that I pulled this, there were over 130 comments on that original message. And one of the really important details of the way our data streams as well as the REST API are structured is we always include the ability to rebuild a conversation thread. I'm going to walk through an example of what I mean by that. So in the case of Reddit, the fields that we look at are name, which is the unique identifier for a post or a comment. And then we have these two fields, the link ID and the parent ID. Okay, so looking at an example, this is a comment with then a comment on that comment, or a nested comment. So the one pink sheep is saying, you want to know what my objection to the movie is, and then they're talking about the CGI. So if we look at how this would actually show up on our side, with the comment, we're going to get thing type comment, the name, so the unique identifier, and then there's the two linkage IDs, the link ID and the parent ID. So the link ID is always going to match up to the name field of that original post. And in this case, because it is a comment on the original post, the parent ID also matches because that's the ID of the post or comment directly above it. So if we look at that nested comment, we see that, again, we're matching to the original name field with our link ID, and here we're matching to the parent comment. So for all of those of you wondering why I spent so much time talking about how we can link all this together, I do not have enough time to really go into why I'm so amped on understanding threading and conversations, but I did want to show you a quick analysis example. Okay, so why do we even care about how all of this links together? Let's go back to that original query that I used when pulling back that post. So again, I was looking for mentions of cats near mentions of the word trailer. And behind the scenes, I pulled all of those comments as well. And I ranked them by which comments had the most votes. Let's look at a few examples. So with 329 vote score, people tend to dislike things that make them physically uncomfortable or horrified. You can read the bleeped one yourselves. If instead of CGI humanoid cat bodies with deep faked faces, they were just dressed in physical cat costumes with makeup, nobody would complain. And the freaking CGI, it is terrifying to look at the cat people. So if you look at these three examples, which were the comments that we're most engaged with, none of them actually mention cats, plural, or the word trailer. So if I had done just my original query to pull back any post or comment that contained mentions of cats near the word trailer, I would miss these. So I would be missing a big part of the conversation, and in a way that is actually giving me a completely inaccurate view of the sentiment. So like I said, I was trying to be positive here. Let's talk about somebody who likes the cats trailer. I used Google's natural language API, and I ran the post data through. And yes, it was positive. Here's an example snippet with its sentiment score. If I were only looking at that post, I would think that, hey, people are pretty okay with it. They like it. But if I go a deeper level and look at the comments themselves, they were largely negative. So to analyze this, I looked at some of the top entities and the sentiment surrounding those. So if we look at CGI, there are 32 mentions in 27 comments, 22 unique authors, sentiment negative. Phrases, CGI Spooky Fest, which is my favorite, and CGI monsters. If I look at the next entity, face or faces, 14 mentions, 14 comments, 14 unique authors, all negative. People saying deep faked faces and weird faces. So this is just an example to show why it is so important to actually look at the entire conversation. Because if you're not, when you're running your analysis, you're going to potentially miss big pieces of the conversation and the context that was actually there for you. You just missed it. Okay, so in addition to the APIs and some of the tools around that, we do occasionally also build out particular tools or toolkits to help answer common questions. And one of the questions that we hear a lot and that Reddit hears a lot is, where do I even get started? I'm a little bit scared of Reddit. I don't know where people are talking about my brand or what they're saying. And so when it comes to actually advertising, that can be a barrier for people. So we have a Tableau workbook that we put together where we can answer those questions. And we're focused in this example more on that ad targeting use, but it really is a way for anyone, no matter how you're trying to use the data, it's a good way just to get a quick understanding of where the conversations are happening about the brands that you care about. Okay, so with this screenshot, you can see where you put in your query. To walk through this example, we're going to step into the shoes of Home Depot. So I'm doing a basic query to start, just looking for any mention of Home Depot. And in the results, what we pull back are the top subreddits where your search term is being mentioned. And we include a few different metrics, rank them on a few different metrics. So the first one that you see is the number of mentions. So this is how many times has Home Depot been mentioned in the subreddit politics. We also have the number of subscribers for the subreddit. So how big is the potential audience? If I were to place ads there, how many people might see them? And then we've combined that into an index score where you can find the more concentrated conversations. So I was a little surprised when I first ran this to see that politics was at the top of the list when it came to Home Depot. I was expecting it to be the Home Depot subreddit or something more related to home improvement. But if I click in and show an example, Home Depot facing boycott over co-founder's Trump donation. So that's why this conversation is happening. It's because people are talking about this boycott. So good for me to know if I'm Home Depot, obviously. In terms of thinking about where I might want to put my ads, probably not politics. I probably don't want to touch that subreddit. If we rank them by the number of subscribers, we can see some of the top subreddits. These are where some of those more general conversations are happening. So the first one is funny, also Ask Reddit. If we look at an example of funny, it's someone talking about their rockin' good time on a Friday night at the Home Depot. So, it's not negative, but not necessarily relevant. If we rank them, sort them by the index score, that's where we're going to get the subreddits that are a little bit more interesting and relevant to the Home Depot use case. So first one is Home Depot. Second one, prop lifting. So this is my new favorite subreddit, where people are actually talking about plant propagation, of all things. So if a piece of a leaf of a succulent or a piece of cacti breaks off, you can sometimes stick that in dirt and have a whole new plant. This is a subreddit dedicated just to that. And if we look at the examples for both Home Depot, which is talking about more things that you would expect, can I get a refund? And the prop lifting, it's people who are going to Home Depot and finding pieces of plants that have fallen off. And then they're going home and they're creating their own pots. It's great. I highly recommend following it. It's just pure joy. People are very excited about this. And so if I'm Home Depot, like this could be something really interesting. One, for me to know it's even happening. I'm pretty tapped into the garden world, and I had no idea this was happening. And also in terms of advertising, so yeah, maybe they're getting a few plants for free, but they need dirt. They need pots. Maybe they want to buy a plant rather than start from a baby leaf. So this could be an interesting group to target to. This is also reflected in this graph. So basically what we're looking at here are the metrics that we already talked about with an additional layer. We also pulled the sentiment. So we had looked at the one example from politics. We ran all of the mentions of Home Depot on politics, and it was mostly negative sentiment. So again, just another way of knowing that's probably not where we want to advertise. But if we look far to the right, we can see, the home improvement one, prop lifting. These all have pretty targeted audiences that have positive things to say about Home Depot. So it could be an interesting place for, one, them to learn, and two, to advertise. I mean, because I was interested, I ran a bunch of additional analysis, like about the prop lifting one, and it would be easy to pull out, here's the top 5 plants that people are talking about. There's a lot that you could do with that data. We also can see it over time. So this one really tells that story of the politics subreddit. It just zoomed up in volume around that boycott. Okay, so I hope that gives you kind of some examples of, one, what are the different metadata fields that you should care about, how you could potentially analyze them and engage on Reddit. I did also want to mention, Reddit isn't our only data partner. We are a huge source of all kinds of social conversations. I'll just flash a couple slides here for you, and then we'll get to questions. So we also have large collection of blogs, news, videos, other message boards aside from Reddit, consumer reviews, so things like TripAdvisor, and broadcast news, so transcripts from TV and radio. And when you think about our data sources and our overall catalog, in general, what you saw with the Reddit data, being able to get a full feed or a filtered feed, or the REST API, we generally have that for most of our data sources. In addition to these, we have a few data partners that we highlight. So we already talked about Reddit. Tencent is another one that's really growing in popularity. That's the largest, not Tencent, but the Weibo. That's the largest public social media site in China. And we just launched our first 90-day index of Weibo data. VK, this is kind of known as the Facebook of Russia. These are all data sources, again, that are in our catalog and typically available through those different delivery mechanisms. Cool. Okay, so we do have time for a few questions, and then, of course, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'll hang out after the session as well.
Thank you very much. This is a certificate of appreciation.
Thank you. I think we had one right here. So typically there's going to be some sort of a fee for accessing the data and then something based on volume of data. Those are usually factored in.
I have a question. Can you talk about the internal architecture for searching? How are you internally implementing this kind of search and API? What kind of platform you are using? Are you using AWS or what's underlying architecture?
So we actually just started using AWS. For some of the other details, I might have to get back to you on that. I don't know all of those specifics.
Okay, thank you.
What is this diagram you showed? Something called index. What is the index value?
So the index is something that we were calculating in the workbook, which was a combination of the number of mentions and the number of subscribers to the subreddit. So really, it's a value meant to find where the most concentrated conversation was happening. Mm-hmm. Oh, in the back.
What are you guys doing to protect the identity of the users, and what are you actually offering to the clients that are using your platform?
Sure. So in terms of all of our data sources, we're never including things like email, phone number, any of that type of personal information. It's only ever going to be the username that's public. And then again, going back to compliance, which is huge for Reddit. They've been one of the more cautious data providers that I've seen, which is great. They're very conscious about their user community and not wanting to create a problem. So if a user deletes everything off of Reddit, everything is deleted on our side, and then also the end recipients of the data. So that's why we have this really, it's not just that we vet the use cases up front, there's also an auditing process that we do where Reddit wants to see, like, where is this data showing up? Like, can they actually get logins to any applications? So if it is being used in a way that would go against kind of, their policy and terms as it relates to the user community, they'd pull the access.
Can the users of your platform download the information that you saw?
Yeah. Yep.
Well, even if they don't know the names of people, they can immediately, in some robotic way, reply and post, rather reply and comment, and keep something going based on the emotional positive or negative about a particular person, company, candidate.
Yes, so we are starting to see more brands engage directly on Reddit with the people talking about them. I always recommend that people kind of listen first, just to see what they're saying. But then there's a few ways that an actual brand can engage. Oftentimes they'll do what's called an AMA, an Ask Me Anything, just to kind of introduce themselves to the community and kind of start to build that bond and that relationship. So we didn't talk about it, but in addition to these APIs that are more focused on actually getting you the data for analysis, we're also starting to manage engagement APIs for some of our customers and some of our partners. So for Reddit, there's also an API where you can respond to a comment or a post.
Okay, thank you very much for listening. And next talk would be Maria, who works at JetBrains.
Thanks, everyone.